What's up, guys? Welcome to the Resistor Podcast. I'm your host, Christopher Jones, and this is our first episode, man, so welcome. We've got this 2024 election right around the corner, and I've got social media just like everybody else, and watching everybody go on and on about inflation and who's at fault, who's to blame, all this stuff. And man, I read some of y'all's comments, and I'm seeing that a lot of people really have no idea what inflation is. They just know that, prices are higher at the grocery store or at the gas pump or whatever. So, I've noticed whenever I ask these guys, so what policies do you think are pushing inflation and driving inflation? 99.9% of you guys can't answer that, and that's all right. I just that's what I'm here for. I'm gonna try and help you out with this. So I've got some notes, so occasionally you might see me looking kind of like I'm reading. It's because I am. I'll call myself out. Let's start with the basics, man. What is inflation? It's the rate at which the general level of prices for goods and services rises, which that means how our money functions in the market. Is it people are, the dollar doesn't go as far as it used to, how it functions over time, we'll say, right? Let's start with some basics. We'll start with the different factors that drive inflation, right? And the different types of inflation. So you got, first up, we'll start with demand, pull inflation, right? This happens when the demand for goods and services go up, but the supply stays limited, right? Like, think of a factory that's producing a product, and all of a sudden commercials come out and everybody sees it, everybody wants this product, right? So they start flooding into stores trying to get this, ordering it online, whatnot, but the factories can't keep up with the demand. So naturally, prices are gonna rise. That's basic supply and demand. In a thriving economy, it can be seen as a sign of increased consumer confidence and spending. But for us workers, that kind of inflation it's a bit of a double-edged sword. While it might indicate economic growth, it also means that the cost of living rises faster than the wages, which is eroding our purchasing power, right? If the wages don't keep up with the rising prices, we're left with less in our pockets, and that even though we're working hard, which really technically kind of working harder because more people want what we're making. So next, let's talk about the cost push inflation, right? This type of inflation occurs when production costs increase, leading businesses to pass those costs on to consumers, typically in the form of higher prices, right? Key drivers of cost push inflation include rising wages and increased costs for raw materials. Now, this is where it gets particularly relevant for us. When workers demand higher wages, rightfully so, given the cost of living, businesses might raise prices to cover those increased wages. This can create a cycle where both wages and prices keep rising, which doesn't necessarily improve our overall economic situation. Instead, it highlights a deeper problem with the structure of our economy. We recognize that workers deserve fair compensation, but addressing cost push inflation requires a broader approach that goes beyond individual wage increases. We need systemic changes to ensure wages, working conditions, and prices are all in balance, rather than just reacting to immediate pressures. Finally, let's look at built-in inflation. This form of inflation is a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy. It happens when people expect prices to keep rising, so they keep acting in ways that contribute to inflation. Workers might demand higher wages to keep up with expected price increases, and businesses might raise prices in anticipation of higher wage costs. This type of inflation underscores a role of expectations and perceptions in the economy, and it's not just about reacting to current conditions, but also about how our beliefs about the future shape economic reality. This is where we can see the need for a different approach, or one that addresses the root causes of inflation and not just its symptoms, rather than just slapping a band-aid on cuts. Maybe stop what's causing the cuts. So understanding inflation helps us see the broader issues at play. It's not just about fighting for higher wages or better working conditions in isolation. It's about challenging the entire economic system that allows inflation to erode our standard of living. Our goal should be to push for an economic system that doesn't just react to inflationary pressures, but actively works to prevent them. This means advocating for policies that promote fair wages, reasonable prices, more equitable distribution of resources. It also means fighting for worker control and influence in the decision-making processes that affect our lives and our communities. And I know what you're thinking. I already know what you're thinking. I can hear some of you guys. Oh, Jesus, Chris, here you come. That's that communist, socialist bullshit that you're always preaching. And it is. It is. You know, socialism doesn't work. Look at Venezuela. Yada, yada, yada. Again, Venezuela is not socialist. Go to Venezuela and find me a factory that's run by the workers, because that is the literal definition of socialism. When the means of production, the factories, right, are owned by the workers. You're not going to find that shit in Venezuela. So save it. Let's learn some shit today. Let's see. Let's consider some practical steps we can take. Supporting strong unions, crucial. Unions not only help negotiate fair wages, but also work to address broader economic issues that affect workers. Secondly, we should advocate for policies that address income inequality and ensure that essential goods and services remain affordable. Lastly, we could work towards systemic change by promoting economic models that prioritize people over profits, such as worker co-ops and community-led initiatives. So inflation, it's not just an abstract economic concept. It's a reflection of deeper issues within our economic system. And by understanding its causes and impacts, we can better advocate for the changes we need to create a fairer and more just world. I appreciate you guys sitting with me through this. I know that's the hard shit to sit through. It's like you're going back to school and having to sit in class, and hopefully I'm a little more interesting than your professors. I want to start doing more of these podcasts where maybe it's live, and maybe, you know, we have a chat going on in the middle of this, so that way you guys can ask me questions and I can, you know, answer in real time. I'm probably going to say a lot more, because you can already guess I'm going to go back and edit. When you're watching the finished product of this, just trust me, I said probably about 50 more times than you heard it. But now, we're not done there, right? Like, you guys, well, Biden's doing this, Biden's doing that, right? Something you need to understand about inflation is it's global. It's not happening just in America. We're not an isolated case, right? It's not like inflation just sucks here. There's other countries where their inflation rates are ridiculous compared to ours. Actually, out of all the industrialized countries, we're doing pretty damn good. We might even be number one. I mean, I haven't checked other countries for today, but I can tell you that today, as of today, our inflation rate in the U.S. is at 2.89%, which is compared to 2.97% last month and 3.18% last year. So that's lower than the long-term average of 3.28. So we're not doing horribly. Our prices going up? Yes. Do you expect them to go down? Like, for real, go down? The only way that's going to happen is if a ton of people die, like what happened during the pandemic, right? Or people stop using the products as much. You know, like gas. Like when everybody's, oh, well, all I know is gas was cheaper under Trump. Yes, of course it was, because he bumbled around and screwed up and mishandled COVID. And because of that, we had to go on lockdowns, and we stayed on lockdown for a lot longer than a lot of other places had to, because half of our population is children. They're not going to listen. They're like 3-year-olds. It's like we have a nation of toddlers, right? And so everybody wants to fight and butt heads and not listen to experts. And that's what we get, right? And so these shutdowns, people aren't going to work anymore. Nobody's driving. Gas isn't being used. when gas isn't being used, it doesn't just sit there in a tanker. Anybody who's a mechanic or you've ever done work on vehicles, you know that you can't just leave gas sitting in a gas tank for forever because it goes bad. It goes bad. Then you're going to have to pay for somebody to come get rid of it, empty out the tankers, empty out everything, clean everything out, but do it in a way that you're not going to get fined for just letting this shit go into the ground. You can't do that, right? That's not ethical and it's not safe. And so that's going to cost you money. You got to find a responsible way to get rid of the gas. Then you got to clean out your storage depots. Then you've got to, make more gas. So what's your best alternative? You want to sell it, right? Like, you're making less of a profit, but at least you're still making a profit and it's not costing you money. So you lower the price. Again, this is basic supply and demand, right? This is basic economics. This is shit everybody should learn like freshman year. I know some of you didn't though, clearly, because again, I see your posts. I'm aware that most of you did not get this. And or at least a good portion of you. I wouldn't even say most. I'd say a good portion of you guys just, this shit's foreign to you. You totally don't get it. And that's okay. Again, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for you guys because I love you. So, overall, yeah, inflation's looking a lot better than it was. And we're getting those numbers down. But, man, guys, there are some things that help keep these things in check, right? And I've had a lot of people going off on me about my dislike for billionaires and stuff like this. And man, it comes from a place. It comes from a logical place, right? It's not healthy to have obscenely rich people. And if you don't understand where this dislike comes from, then it's probably because you don't understand the difference between a millionaire and a billionaire. If you need help with that, there's a TikTok video a guy made where he's counting out rice. He takes 1 grain of rice, and that's supposed to represent $100,000. So he gets 10 of those grains of rice, and that's $1 million. And then he sits there and counts out enough grains of rice for $1 billion. It's like a cup of rice. It's a big difference between 10 grains and like a massive amount of rice. And he did this video to show Jeff Bezos' wealth at the time, which I believe was 122 billion. And by the time he's done, he's got this enormous pile of rice. And keep in mind, the average American makes like half of 1 grain of rice. And also keep in mind that since then, Jeff Bezos' wealth has doubled. So he's just sitting on like this giant mound of rice. And you guys can't understand why I'm like, tax the fuck out of that guy. Like, yes, I'm gonna cuss periodically in this podcast. I'm gonna tell you some shit because it's upsetting to me. It's boiling my brain to think of like how much most of America does not take this seriously. They want to have some sort of opinion on it, but they don't want to spend the 30 minutes to educate themselves on what this is, how it works, and how we got here, right? But I'm going to try and keep this one from running too long because I really just wanted to explain what inflation is, right? But Americans, guys, we got to understand that there are certain guardrails that we have put in place to keep these things from spiraling out of control. And when you take the guardrails down, you can't be surprised when occasionally a car goes off the side of the cliff. And right now we're all riding in the same bus. And everybody's been trying to take these guardrails down. And I'm like, stop doing that. Stop voting for Republicans who are going to, give tax breaks to these billionaires who clearly don't need it. Back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, when America was building, our tax rate on the richest 1% was between 70 and 90% for like all of those decades. And that's why our middle class was thriving, because they weren't looking to us workers to pay that. We're paying our fair share, but the people who are raking in tons of profit, they need to pay their fair share too. So don't fall for the, prices are expensive at your local grocery store or at the gas pump because of inflation. It's bullshit. It's not inflation. The resources have not dwindled that low. Workers are getting paid a little bit more, but not enough to account for all this inflation. It's not inflation when CEOs and corporations are raking in record profits, guys. They fucked you over. And they're telling you bullshit, and it's a con, and you're believing it. Stop getting conned, America. Stop getting conned. This is important because it affects all of us. All of us. we should be able to make a decent wage and make a decent living. And I'm going to drop some fun history facts on you guys, right, from time to time. Like when Franklin Delano Roosevelt instituted the first federal minimum wage, it was to support a family. So when people look at you and say, oh, well, these kids flipping burgers shouldn't be able to make a living doing that. Yes, they should. That's exactly what minimum wage was created for. It was made so that way you could support a family of 4, right? And pay for your housing, your education, your healthcare, your entertainment, and provide you with a decent life. That's exactly what it was made for. So where are you getting your information from? And he said this when he instituted it. He said it didn't matter what kind of job you're doing. It doesn't matter if you're pushing a broom and cleaning toilets or flipping burgers. It doesn't matter. If you're an American and you work a solid work week, then you should be able to make a living. And then we should be going after these corporations that only offer, 30 hours a week, 34 hours a week, so that way they don't have to pay you benefits. It's bullshit. It's bullshit. We have antitrust laws. We have all these laws put up to keep these corporations from getting too big, right? From developing monopolies and all that shit. But you keep voting for Republicans who are trying to strip these laws away and give corporations rights. Like, dude, shit. For God's sake, dude, Citizens United, when they decided that corporations are people, so that way they can donate unlimited amounts of money to campaigns, and certain PACs and special interest groups. And what the hell are you doing, America? Stop voting for these guys. Stop voting for them. If you don't give them the power, they can't do this shit. But you keep, I could learn about it, but this dude over here, that's my guy, and he told me it's nothing to worry about. So, but I'm going to keep bitching about the economy for the next 20 years and not spend the hour and a half that it would take to look up this stuff and actually learn about it. And that way I could prevent it in the future. No. I'm going to keep voting against my own best interest because, America. And, what was it, the Simpsons movie where I was elected to lead, not to read. What the fuck? Come on, guys. You're killing me. Reading's fundamental. It really is. Let's see. I'm hungry. I'm gonna wind this down and end my rant, but man, I'm really gonna need you guys to step up to the plate before this next election, because you're not just hurting yourself in the future, but you're also hurting your fellow Americans. And if you really give a shit about this country, you'll take a minute to learn. You'll take a minute to educate yourselves, and you'll take a minute to do your part, man. Do your part. That's really what this is about, is doing your part. And your part is to either educate yourself on these matters or stay the fuck out of the decision-making process. Sit this one out. It's okay. It's okay. It's not your duty to vote. It's your duty to educate yourself and then vote. If you're not educated, it's your duty to sit your uneducated ass at home. And yes, I am not nice about this. I am not pleasant about it because it affects me. It affects my children. And, if I end up having grandchildren one day, then it's going to affect them too. All of these things, man, it doesn't just happen overnight. It's like when you guys sit here and give Trump credit for Obama's policies, because that's what it is. Learn how our government works. Learn that the election happens in November. The president doesn't get inaugurated, sworn into office, for those of you who don't know what inaugurated means, until January. And then he has typically till about May to present his budget proposal, right? His fiscal policy, right? Then that usually gets knocked around back and forth for a little bit. People are like, yeah, I'm okay with that. No, I'm not okay with that. And typically it goes into effect about till end of October, beginning of November of the president's first year in office. Now, we know how our government works. Everything's slow as hell. We need this light turned off, or it needs to be dimmed a little bit. So somebody's not just going to come out and dim the lights for you. It's not going to work like that, right? What's going to end up happening is shit needs to be filled out in triplicate. This paper is going to be sent over there. That's going to be signed, stamped, sealed, sent back over here. And that's going to happen about 4 or 5 times. Maybe in 6 months, we can get somebody to come out and flip that switch for you. When was Trump's best numbers? His first year in office? That's still Obama's terms. That's still all of his policies. Just like Obama's first year in office were still all of George W.'s policies. That's why his first year sucked. And if you look at the numbers, Obama's stuff was going down, down, down. And then around the time his policies kicked in, it slowly started ticking up. And then it went up, up, up. And it kept going up. It kept going up for 72 consecutive months. The dude holds a record for the most consecutive months of growth. So when you blame a bad economy on Obama, man, no. Is Obama flawless? No, I'm not even a Democrat, man. You guys got me siding with Democrats because you're picking the worst of the worst Republicans, right? Like, the only time I ever voted for a Democrat or a Republican, dude, I voted for a Republican. And it was Ron Paul. And, my opinions on Ron Paul have definitely changed since then, but you guys got me voting Democrat, and I don't want to. I want to go back to talking shit about both sides. I really sincerely do, because that's where I'm happy. I like saying some shit about the Republicans and the Democrats. I don't like picking the side of the left. I don't like it. But you forced me into this, right? Obama's policies worked. They worked because they were policies that worked for Americans, not just, CEOs. And not just billionaires. It was policies that worked for everybody. And the housing crisis, all that was underway well before, Obama came in. All these things, these bubbles. This is what happens when you deregulate industries and you let these corporations make their own set of rules. Because anytime you do that, it'd be like if you let your kids set their own bedtime and make their own, menus for lunch and dinner. They're going to eat candy 24/7 and they'll sleep when they die. That's how their body just crashes from the sugar. That's how they're going to run it. And why do you expect different from the banks? Why do you expect different from the housing market? Why do you expect different from pharmaceutical companies? They're all doing the same shit. They're children in a candy store, and they need to be regulated. They need to be regulated. Hear me again. They need to be regulated. That's our job. That's what we are supposed to do, is vote for people that will get into office, make laws to regulate these people, and watch them, and then punish them when they screw up, right? You talk about, oh, Jones, you and your socialist bullshit commie nonsense. Well, guys, I hate to break it to you, but we don't really live in a free market capitalist system. We don't. Because if we did, here's a news flash, when the banks failed, we would have let them fail. When the housing market crashed, we would have let it crash. We wouldn't be bailing these guys out. We wouldn't be, because that's not free market capitalism. Free market capitalism says that we would let these systems that were fallible and flawed, we'd let them fail. And the next best system under that would rise up to take its place. That's how this would work. It's not really that complex. I've got this weird love-hate relationship with humanity right now. Because while I try to remain optimistic, and I have a lot of hope for humanity and a lot of love for humanity, this kind of shit is depressing, man. It causes me a lot of anxiety because I worry about us, because we're letting people make decisions that they shouldn't be making because they're uneducated decisions. Please, America, please educate yourselves. Whether you're listening to me or you're listening to somebody else, find somebody else that you like that talks about these things and just give them a listen, And if you disagree with them, don't just turn off what they're saying. Go look it up. Come back at them. Go do your research. I hear the right saying all the time, well, just do your research. Do your research. See, that's the problem, is the people on the left, most of them actually have done the research. You just don't want to hear it, because in order for you to argue with them, that means that you would have to do your research too. And when I say do your research, I mean really do your research, not just watch some dude talking into his phone. That's not research. It's a starting point. That guy can say some things and you can be like, oh, I need to go look that up myself. When I was telling you what the inflation rate is. If you don't believe me, please go look it up. Challenge me. Come back and say some shit. Argue with me. Let's talk some shit. Let's talk that shit. But America, man, stop being mad about inflation if you're not going to look at what's causing it. If you're not going to look at, what's really going on, because there is something going on, and it's not what you think it is. It's actually not even complicated. And that's the weird thing to me, is the right always wants to, follow these conspiracy theories down rabbit holes, but this isn't even a conspiracy theory. It's obvious, and it's what's actually happening. But it is so twisted and evil and fucked up that, I mean, you can call it a conspiracy theory. If I call it a conspiracy theory, will you actually go look it up? Please? All right, guys. I love you. I'm going to go eat some dinner. And I guess I'll start editing this. And we'll get it out to you ASAP. And we'll see you for episode 2. Love you. Bye. Hey, I wanted to thank you guys for tuning into the Resistor Podcast, and just want to remind you that if you like what I'm doing and you want to support my channel, please feel free to jump over to resistorstreetwear.com and buy something. That's how I fund my channel. So, because we're not really getting a whole ton of views just yet, but I'd like to keep doing this, and I'd like to keep showing you guys love. So please show me some back. All right, appreciate it. Thanks.